I feel like when you get into watch collecting and become a watch collector, the list of watches that you want just never changes. It never sits still. New stuff's released, you find older vintage watches that you want to put in your collection, and it just keeps changing, and that's part of the journey. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you 10 watches that are on my list at the moment that I really want to buy. I've got vintage watches in here, super rare watches in here, and also a couple of new watches peppered in to this list. Welcome back to the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, as always. And let's start from the beginning. One of my biggest watch journey regrets was selling the Omega Seamaster 300 meter Great White. This is a GMT watch and it was discontinued in the early 2000s. And since its discontinuation and since I stupidly sold it, I've wanted this watch back. This model has a beautiful stainless steel bezels, and stainless steel bezels, as I've said in tons of different videos, are a dying breed in the industry. It has a beautiful white dial with really tightly knitted wave patterns running through it, a GMT complication, a beautiful red GMT hand, a date window tightly tucked away at the 3 o'clock mark, and big, bold, loomed hour markers. This watch is absolutely stunning. This specific model is one of the rare watches that's been on my list and stayed unchanged since I sold it. I literally, as soon as the watch left my house, I regretted sending it away. This is my biggest watch journey regret. Now, this watch comes in at about £3,000 to £4,000, depending on box and papers, condition, etc. But it's one that's been in my list for a very long time, and I don't think that'll change. On the subject of Omega, because there is another Seamaster that caught my eye because I'm an Omega fanboy. When this watch came out about 3, maybe 4 months ago now, I was instantly infatuated by it. I loved how different it was. I love the different stuff that they've done in this watch that separates it from the rest of the Seamasters. This is the Omega Seamaster 300 meters bronze gold on bronze gold. It comes in at the exact same specs that we know from the Seamaster. It comes in at 42 millimeters in diameter, 13.8 millimeters in thickness, has a lug-to-lug of 49.7 millimeters, and has the Omega caliber 8806 movement with 55 hours of power. This full model comes in bronze gold, and bronze as a metal, actually precious metals in general, are something that I want to start getting more into. I am quite vanilla in my collecting style. I do like white dialed steel watches, and that's what I tend to gravitate towards. So I want to start kind of widening my scope of watches. Another detail that they've added to this watch that I absolutely love is the aluminium bezel. So most watches, most Omega Seamasters have a ceramic bezel. The current models have that ceramic bezel that we kind of know from the King, for example. But this has an aluminium bezel similar to what we can see in the Tudor Black Bay range. This bezel gives a really nice matte feel. It's not as reflective, it's not as shiny as ceramic, and over time, I can imagine this bezel getting quite dusty, kind of picking up battle scars from wearing it and looking really nice and vintage. With that all said, this watch does come in at £26,400, which kind of sucks, because I'll never be able to get one. The next watch that's recently made the cut for my list, and when I say my list, I literally have a list of watches on my phone. It keeps getting longer and shorter, and I keep replacing models. I literally have a list on my phone called the watch list that I just watches that it becomes an obsession. But anyway, the Breitling watch that I've chosen for this video that recently made the cut was the Breitling B31, the top time B31, specifically that baby blue with the white dial. I love the shape of this watch. I love the movement behind this watch. I love the leather strap on this watch, which is a weird one for me because I don't normally like leather straps, but I feel like the kind of beigey tanned look kind of works with the dial of this model. This watch comes in a pretty perfect sizing of 38 millimeters in diameter. It comes in full stainless steel, is water resistant to 10 bars, and has the Breitling manufacturer B31 movement. This has 78 hours of power. This watch was released just before Watches and Wonders, I'm pretty sure. So it was released in about April of this year. And instantly when it was released, it was the watch that converted me. All the other Breitlings I kind of liked, but I liked them from afar. But this is the one that I thought, oh, right, I would get that. That's the watch that I would get. And it's weird how something subconsciously just changes in a collector's mind when they see something they really love. I can't really identify what it is that I love about this watch more than the others, because I think the others are really nice. But there's something there that just I want that one. This watch comes in at $5,600 US. By the way, guys, let me know in the comments if you also have a list in your phone. Maybe I'm weird. I know I am weird, but am I that weird? Is that like a normal thing? The Longines Legend Diver White Dial is the next watch that I've picked for this list. This was a recent addition to the list. I actually got rid of the Longines Zulu Time Titanium to slot this one in because I want a Longines model. I keep going on about Longines models, but I keep kind of changing the tune and changing where I'm looking when it comes to Longines, and that's partially because they keep bringing out banger after banger after banger. This Longines Legend Diver comes in at 39 millimeters in diameter, 12.7 mil in thickness, and 47 millimeters lug to lug. It has a beautiful new white dial, and that white dial, I mean, it brings an extra element to this watch. It adds so much fun and so much flair to this watch, and I absolutely love it. I love how it plays against the lume. I love how it plays against the stainless steel. I love how it plays against the polished metal, so reflecting the light, making it look bright and airy. It just is an absolute banger of a release. And I think this colorway is what Longines were missing in the Longines Legend Diver. Now, it comes in at £3,150. And for that money, you do get a lot for your money. An interior rotating bezel, a pretty brilliant movement. The movement is the automatic L888, which has 72 hours of power. And we can recognize this movement from the Longines Hydro Conquest. It also has brilliant diving heritage, and it's something so different, I feel, when it comes to watches. It's just something that I don't have yet, I don't own yet, and something different to anything else in my collection. It's giving JLC Polaris vibes, but less expensive. So a lot of you that watch these videos will know that my next watch will be the Tudor Black Bay Pro White Dial. So I'm not gonna labor the point, I'm not gonna harbor the point of going over that watch because a lot of you guys will know about it. But on doing some more research into Tudor and on being a little bit of a Tudor fanboy, I did find something very interesting, and it has since made the cut for my list. This is the vintage Tudor Submariner reference 75090. This watch comes in at 36 millimeters in diameter, which is a lot smaller than we would think for watches. But remember, back in those days, you know, it's actually not that long ago, but back in 1970s, small was the fashion. Small, dainty watches were in style, and then they got bigger, and now they're kind of going back down again. It comes in full stainless steel, has a beautiful blue dial, and also a blue aluminium bi-directional bezel, and it also has a tritium dial. So the tritium is on the lume. That's a radioactive substance. They since stopped using that because radioactivity and all that. I think that the watch industry quickly learned their lesson and learned that radioactive materials were bad, so they stopped using tritium. And it has a water resistance of 200 meters. It also has an ETA caliber 2824-2 movement. I just love how vintage this watch looks. I love the hues and flares running through it of Tudor and Rolex when they used to be a little bit more similar. I love how dusty that bezel will get over time. The blue will kind of fade into this dusty blue, and it will look really, really nice on the wrist. I also feel that this watch is a watch enthusiast's watch. I feel like your average Joe on the street might recognize a Tudor kind of Black Bay or a Rolex Submariner, maybe a Rolex Daytona or an AP Royal Oak. That's the kind of, that's their scope when it comes to watches, but only people that are in the industry will recognize something like this. So it attracts the right kind of people that you can have that watch conversation with. Now, if you're to pick this watch up in the pre-owned market, because obviously it's not in production now, it costs you around about £3,000 to £4,000. That's obviously with box and papers and depending on the condition, etc., etc. But I do like vintage watches, and I'm getting more into vintage watches. And if I were to get a vintage watch, I think it'd either be a Tudor, a Rolex, or a Vacheron. Rolex and Vacheron are on the list vintage-wise, so I'm going to be talking about them soon. You're not going to want to miss them, especially the Vacheron. It's sick. Before we move on, let me know what your favorite vintage watch is in the comments. This is something that I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole with recently, and it's becoming a problem. So let's add to my problem. Let's add some salt on the wound of my problem. Okay, so I said that I liked vintage watches, and vintage Tudors, Rolexes, Vacherons are on the horizon. They're on my scope at the moment. And this vintage Rolex, it caught me by surprise. This is the Rolex Daytona 6265 Big Red. These models were introduced in 1971 and it was produced until 1987. The big red refers to the dials with the word Daytona printed in red above the lower subdial. The movement in this model is the movement 727, which is basically a Vacheron 72 base movement, and it's been enhanced by Rolex. I just love everything about this Daytona. You guys might know that I'm a fan of stainless steel bezel Daytonas ever since I saw the white dial stainless steel bezel Daytona, but seeing this, seeing the big pushers, seeing the vintage flares, seeing that big bold red Daytona in text, everything about this watch screams vintage Rolex. Even the movement. I mean, when was it that Rolex actually stopped using or buying movements externally and modifying them? It must have been like the 1980s. Now, if you're to get this watch on the pre-owned market, again, depending on box and papers, condition, etc., you could pay around about 60 to 80,000 pounds. So it's on my list, but it's going to be on my list until I remortgage everything I own. All right, the next one that we have is an interesting one because it's a cool watch, a cool concept, but in my opinion, kind of crazily priced. This is the Norqain Freedom 60 Chrono 40mm Enjoy Life Special Edition. This model comes in at 40mm in diameter, 14.9mm in thickness, so it is a thick boy, and it has a 49.2mm lug to lug. And then we get to the movement, and this is why I can't understand the price. This model essentially has a Sellita movement in it. It has the Sellita SW510A. So I don't really understand. I mean, I can understand Norqain being a little bit more premium. Maybe they have better materials, better stuff on the dials, all that kind of stuff, better technology. But £3,000 more technology without upgrading the movement? That seems pretty steep to me. But listen, I don't want to bash this watch too hard. I do really like it. That's why I've included it on this list. But am I going crazy here? I mean, let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Maybe I am going crazy, but to me, it does seem that little bit steep. I can understand a limited edition, but £3,000 just for the limitedness? I don't get it. Right, taking a big step up in price, and this is another watch that I'll never get, but it made the list because I did think it was really cool. IWC, they've obviously got this relationship with Formula One, and everything has been about that F1 movie at the moment. It's kind of crazy. I've seen it. It's actually a really good movie. I kind of enjoyed it. It's kind of predictable, but it's fun. It's a good, fun movie, and I do like the Sunny Haze limited edition that they brought out. I would have rather they used stainless steel hour markers instead of the gold against the green, but hey, that's my OCD flaring up. But they did release another watch at Watches and Wonders that kind of went below the radar that little bit more. And I kind of know why, because it's so expensive. But I had this on the wrist at Goodwood. They let me try it on. They said, here's the watch of your dreams. And I put it on and I smiled, and then they said, now give it back. This is the IWC Engineer 40, and it comes with a black dial and in full yellow gold. When I had this on the wrist, I felt like an absolute pimp. I felt incredible just because of the pure value of that watch, the heft of the gold. I mean, you really felt everything. Not to mention the dimensions of the Engineer are unbelievable. The black dial played and contrasted wonderfully against the gold on that watch. I was actually at Goodwood with Britt, and I showed Britt and her husband it, and they were kind of going crazy about it. And then a lot of people were coming up trying to get photos of it just because they saw it on my wrist. It's such a cool watch, but with not that cool a price point. This watch comes in at £40,200. Yeah, I know. It's not nice, is it? Okay, so next on the list, and you guys are gonna absolutely kill me for this, and I apologize in advance, but I have to say, this watch got me. It really did. This is the Tudor Black Bay 54. This is the new Lagoon Blue. I loved the stainless steel bezel. Maybe I have a thing for... I do have a thing for stainless steel bezels. And on this watch, combined with that beautiful matte finished blue dial, it worked perfectly. Not to mention the specs of this watch. The Tudor Black Bay 54 is something that I've kind of avoided. And the reason that I've avoided it is because I just thought, too small. No. And then I got this on and thought, damn, it actually kind of suits. This watch comes in at 37mm in diameter, which again, I thought was too small, but it kind of suited my 6.5-inch wrist. It comes in at 11.2mm in thickness, has the COSC certified MT5400, and it comes in at 3,500 £190. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. This watch is a scratch magnet. And yes, you'd be correct. It is a scratch magnet. I think this watch is a really bizarre hybrid between a dress watch with dive functionality. It has all the functionality of the dive watch, the actual Black Bay 54, but no one would ever use it for that because it is a dressy looking piece. So it sits in this weird middle ground of being a sports watch, but technically a dress watch. I can get my head around it though. I get it. Like I do. I understand it. It is just that little bit weird. Yes, I understand what people might think. It will get scratched. It will get scuffed, but you'd enjoy it. And it looks cool. All right, next up is one that's been on my list for 4 years. Oh, that's so scary to say. 4 years. Back when I had a full head of hair, this watch was still on the list. And it's one that I'll glaze over because I've talked about it a lot. But it is the Vacheron Constantin Overseas Everest Edition. Now, a little bit of backstory before I move on, because I have covered this before and I don't want to bore you guys. But the Everest Edition Vacheron Constantin was a collaboration with world-renowned photographer Corey Richards. Now, Corey's actually been on my podcast, the Into the Mind podcast, and we spoke in detail about this watch. So if you want to hop over and listen to Corey, he's a super cool guy. I'm sure you'll love it. But I always looked up to Corey in photography. I'm firstly a photographer. And when they brought this out, it was a conceptualization of everything that I wanted in a watch, plus more, because it had the connections with, Mount Everest and Corey Richards, and Mount Everest being in the back, the photo in the back, etc., etc. So this was a really cool watch, one that will probably never leave my list, one that I'll probably never own because they're all gone. But listen, I can dream. And now we get to that vintage Vacheron. That vintage Vacheron that I spotted and thought, wow, I'll never own you, but I want you. This is the Vacheron Constantin Overseas, reference number 47040/000W-9500. Now, there is remarkably little information on this watch online, but from pictures, it looks like one of the most sleeping, is it sleeper watch you call it? Yeah, it's a sleeper watch. This is a sleeper Vacheron, one that nobody speaks about, but one that everybody wants. It comes in at 42 millimeters in diameter, full stainless steel, but around the bezel you do have titanium, so it's that darker metal that looks so futuristic and so cool. The date window is tucked away at between the 4 and 5 mark, so it kind of throws the dial a little bit off axis, but I don't know, I kind of like it. There's so many vintage flares on this watch that I just absolutely love, and a vintage Vacheron is definitely something that I want. In my opinion, they're at the top of the Holy Trinity. They come in at around about £10,000 to £12,000. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Or follow our Instagram at Chisholm Hunter Watches, or my Instagram at HP Lifelens, or the podcast Into the Mind podcast, where you can see people like Corey Richards. And I'll see you guys real soon.